Start.
Okay.
All right, hello guys. This is our technology connected lesson plan for IL 650 at JSU in Dr. Kimberly Warfield's class. Presenting this lesson will be Miss Holly Murphy, Miss Christy Towns, and myself, Zach Gilliland. We're going to talk about rhetorical analysis of a historical content from a speech that was presented in history by Patrick Henry, one of the founding fathers of America. And that's sort of what's on the agenda for the lesson. The students will be using Chromebooks. They'll be using technology. They'll be using dialogue, discussion with their classmates in hopes that they are able to pick up on what rhetoric is and what that looks like in written literature. So to begin class, we're going to do our warm-up, and I'll turn it over to one of the ladies now to do this piece here.
Okay, well, we're really glad all of you are here today, and we're going to start our warm-up. You know, to warm your mind up, get your brain going, and get you started thinking about what we're about to learn. So let's think about this for a minute. Just put this in your hand and choose an undesirable or a misunderstood animal. I need you to create an argument for why this animal would make an excellent pet. Now, when I think of an undesirable or I don't think they're misunderstood, but somebody else might agree. I think of a snake or a skunk. Those are animals that are very undesirable, but some people think they might like to have them as pets. So tell me or think about why this would make an excellent pet.
All right, and you're going to do that. You're going to submit that in Google Classroom. So if you'll navigate to the Classroom page, and I have this posted today as a question. So I just want you to submit your response there. That's what that's going to look like on your end. It's the question listed. You put it in the text box and click submit whenever you're finished. You got a couple of minutes to do that.
Okay, students, I know that you probably came up with some really good answers and some very persuasive arguments as to why you felt that the pet that you chose was misunderstood. And you may not have realized it, but you were probably using some rhetorical terms in your argument. There are several types of rhetorical terms that you need to be familiar with and that we're going to be studying about today. A couple of those, if you'll take a look at that, the list is beginning with allusion and ending with repetition. Now, I want you to take a minute and read all the words in the list in between allusion and repetition. These are rhetorical terms, and these are terms that we are going to be identifying in some written work by some of our founding fathers, and then you are going to be using those terms as well. So take a look at those for just a minute.
Okay, class, after you have looked at the terms and you've thought about what they mean and that kind of thing, I want you to think, what exactly is rhetoric? We hear that word all the time. I heard it on the news this morning coming to school. I heard it this afternoon on the radio. What exactly is rhetoric and what do we use it for? I think the definition of rhetoric would be the art, or it is an art. Someone who has that gift of gab, something else, or think something else, they're using rhetoric. Next slide.
All right. I'm going to go over this slide with you after you've talked with your classmates about what you thought rhetoric was. It's a lot of the rhetorical terms and the rhetorical strategies are used in these methods. A big chunk of it's persuasive writing. Many of you have probably used rhetoric when speaking to your parents, trying to be persuasive, pleading with them for various different things, or argumenting a certain side of things. But persuasion is a form of discourse, so it's speaking or writing that uses reasoning, authority, and emotional appeals. And those words have their own rhetorical term. Logos is what the term is for reasoning. If you're questioning authority, or if you're speaking with authority, rhetorically, then the term that refers to is ethos, and emotional appeals is pathos, to convince another person to act or think in a certain way. You're trying to plead your case on a certain topic and have the person you're speaking with or writing to begin to lean your direction and think the way you do on the topic. Or a rhetorical question is a question to which no answer is expected. It's meant to make the reader or listener think, is sort of like a critical thinking question. Parallelism is a kind of repetition in which words or phrases in the same grammatical form connect ideas. You're going to see a whole lot of parallelism in the piece of literature that we're going to look at here in just a few minutes. I'm going to jump down to the bottom. I mean, you've got this slide here as a reference. The bottom is allusions. They're references to events, figures, or phrases from the Bible. In this selection, biblical allusions have the rhetorical appeal of shared beliefs. And we're going to talk about, again, in this document you're going to look at today, there are a whole lot of allusions as well in the document. All right, so who we're going to deal with today is Patrick Henry. I know you cover him in the earlier part of your US 10 history course. He was a founding father of the United States of America, so he was against the king and Britain and Parliament, and he wanted America to be free. He wanted the colonists to be free. He had concerns that if no fighting ever took place after all the taxation and manipulation from the colonists, from the British, that eventually colonists would become slaves of the British. So he thought that the only answer was to fight. So that was sort of his initial viewpoint regarding liberty or freedom for the colonists. After America did gain its independence, he became the very first governor of the state of Virginia. He was a very gifted speaker. You'll see that here in just a little bit. He was a lawyer, so he's very well spoken and very knowledgeable on what he had to say about various different topics throughout his life. And he delivered a speech to the Virginia Legislature that became titled "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death." After the United States was established, he was an anti-federalist, meaning he was against a strong national government. So he wasn't for the U.S. Constitution. For those people who are anti-federalists that weren't constitutionalists per se, many of them wanted amendments added to the Constitution before they'd ratify it and become a state. And he was very influential in that too. And that's the Bill of Rights that you all know about. So that's who he is. And we're going to look a little bit today about his speech, and we're going to dive off into it and try to analyze some of the rhetoric that's in there, and then see if we have used that in our own lives and not really known it. Here's a photograph or a drawing of what this speech might have looked like. You can see all these people at the Virginia Legislature. They're all very engaged in what's going on. They seem to be very determined in what they're arguing. What they're doing here is they're talking about going to war with Great Britain. And as we all know, that did eventually take place. These people were called patriots, and that's who they were. They felt like "Give me liberty or give me death" was or Patrick ended his speech with that very quote. They meant that deep down. Liberty, if you think about what liberty means to you or what it is, it's essentially your freedoms that you all have today. And this was in the 1700s. This next slide I'm going to jump to, this moves you or fast forwards you about 100 years down the road in the immigration era. I had a student, this is an actual piece of work that a Sardis student completed 5 or 6 years ago. And this gentleman is trying to immigrate into America, and he's been turned away. If you notice on the left-hand side, that notice is talking about foreign-born people now living in America. Only additional 3% can enter. He has been turned away. So he's with the majority at this point that don't get to immigrate to America. But if you notice the name or the title of that gate that's sitting there, say that's at Angel or Ellis Island. It says the Gate of Liberty. So this little cartoon that this student drew is very applicable and it's relatable to back when Patrick Henry in his era in the 1700s. You notice in the very bottom right-hand corner, it says, "Does that look like freedom or liberty to you?" So you can kind of look at that and make your own opinion on that topic. But I brought that in because it was an actual piece, and it just shows that liberty and freedom and all that stuff is very applicable all throughout history. All right, so we're going to look now. This piece here, I haven't shown you the document yet, but this piece was pulled from the speech itself. This is actually the second to last paragraph of Patrick Henry's speech. So we're going to kind of break this up and look at it just a minute or two about some of the quotes, the paragraphs on the left, and then what he's saying or what the rhetorical analysis is on the right. We're just going to kind of look at a few of these items now.
So look at the first sentence. It says, "They tell us, sir, that we are weak." That's underlined in pink, and I'm going to get to the reason why in a minute, but let's read that again. "They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so formidable an adversary." I think what he means and what we have on our slide, Patrick Henry begins with the loyalist opposing argument that the colonists are weak. He starts off by telling everyone in that room, think back to the slide that we just looked at from the 1700s that said, "Give me liberty or give me death." He wants to bring these people over to his way of thinking, and they're afraid. Hey, if somebody was looking at me and saying, "I think we should go to war," I would be afraid. I would be, because it's human nature, and they were too, but he's trying to appeal to how they feel. You think you're strong enough to take this on? Because England says we're not. He's providing an argument.
Right. And I'm gonna jump in here and look at some of these questions that's going down there. It's underlined in purple. You know, we talked about what rhetorical questions were a few minutes ago. You know, they're questions that aren't really intended to get an answer, but to get the audience to start thinking. And I want you to listen to the next little series of questions. He said, "But when shall we be stronger? Will it be the next week or the next year? Will it be when we are totally disarmed? Will it be when a British guard shall be stationed or quartered in everybody's homes? Shall we gather strength by irresolution and inaction?" Just a series of very in-depth questions that need to be answered by the audience. And that was his way of provoking thought in the audience.
I also think it's very interesting in how he begins, and he begins with all of these rhetorical questions, and gets everybody involved in the part that Ms. Murphy read by saying, "Hey, they think we can't do it. They think we're weak," and then he begins asking them to think. But then, at the bottom here, at the part that's underlined in yellow, he says, "Sir, we are not weak if we make a proper use of those means which the God of nature hath placed in our power." And this is the ultimate appeal that he is making. What he is actually saying is our power does not come from the king, but he's appealing to the authority of ethos, giving credit to the power coming only from God. And as we've all learned, we know that a part of the reason that people came to America was for religious freedom, so that they could worship God in the ways in which that they felt were proper for them. So he's appealing to the ultimate sacrifice that these folks have made, and saying that we don't answer to the king, we answer only to God. So that is a great example of appealing or using rhetoric to appeal to people's devotion to the God that they serve. And also looking at this and thinking about what we have just looked at, and thinking about those rhetorical strategies that were used. Think about it and think as I read this question. What rhetorical strategy is the most effective through writing if you wish to demonstrate authority? What rhetorical strategy is the most effective through writing if you wish to demonstrate authority? You guys take a minute. I want you to think about that. And I want you to turn to the person next to you and have a brief discussion about that. Okay.
Guys, after you have completed that discussion on that prompted question there, we're going to move on now. So we've already analyzed the second to last paragraph. We're going to now break into groups. We'll group you into fours. We're going to look at the document together. We're going to do another paragraph together. And then we're going to allow you to go through and do the rest of the paragraphs individually as a group. And I want you to, I try to identify as many rhetorical strategies within the text that you can possibly find. And then I want you to kind of highlight, underline, bold. You kind of use your creativity there to document your own analysis of the paragraphs into a Google Doc, which you'll submit for this assignment. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to show you where to locate that document, and that will be right here in your classroom stream. Under classwork, Patrick Henry speech. If you click on that, it'll pull this little drop-down box up, and here is the actual speech, or the transcript of the speech. So you can see that it's quite a bit of literature there. And this is the paragraph right here that we just completed, that we looked at together. And you can see at the very, very end here, the last statement, he says, "Forbid it, Almighty God, I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." And you're going to see a lot of people, or it's going to become evident that many people jumped on board with that thought and wound up deciding to be patriots. And America, or the colonists, did go to war with the British, and that's why you have the freedom. That's the initiation of the reasons you've got the freedoms that you've got today. But that's what we're going to do. There's where the document is at. We're going to do that. And then now that you have had the opportunity to do so, here is the third question.
Okay, so now, class, I want you to think for a minute. Think about all the things that we've talked about, the parts of the speech that we've discussed and we've reviewed, and think about this. Upon reviewing Patrick Henry's speech, what impact do you feel that his persuasiveness had on the audience in which he was speaking to? Now, again, let's think about who he's talking to. He's talking to all these colonists, and it's hot. They're in this room, and it's very emotionally charged, and he is hot. He's mad. He is so passionate about what he's speaking. Do you think any of that passion fell over into that audience and had an effect on them? Let's take just a minute and talk to your folks, your people in your group, and discuss that, because I think that it did. When you come back and think about it, think about the America that we are today. Would we be here had he not made this speech?
Okay, guys. Another thing that I would like for you to think about. If you were writing a letter and you needed to demonstrate logos, ethos, and pathos strategies to prove your point, what would be some of the things that you would include or consider while constructing your written work? Now think about that. What would be the most powerful to prove your point in writing? You may want to go back and review exactly what logos, ethos, and pathos strategies, what those look like. There are great examples in the passage that we analyzed together, and also in the full document. But think about what Patrick Henry did, how he said it, how he was persuasive, and I want you to think about, if you were writing a letter, what strategies would you use to prove your point? Think about that for a minute and talk with your partner.
All right, guys, now that you've had the opportunity to do that, you've had plenty of discussion on rhetorical analysis of this work. So to pull this tenfold together, what you're all going to do is select a current issue in this world, and there are plenty of them. pick a side. It can be a political thing. It can be a COVID-19 thing. And then you're going to draft a speech on the issue to be presented. You're going to do it to the teacher, or you can do it before the class. So what you're going to need to do is try to use or utilize rhetorical strategies to try to persuade or be persuasive to your audience. So for your homework, we want you to just sort of consider some of the current issues that are in this world. Go home, talk to your parents about it, guardians about it, whomever. Think about, here are some examples of what's going on: COVID-19, political agendas. This is an election year, healthcare, abortion, just various different, there are tons to choose from that are current issues in this world. And then I want you to, on paper tomorrow, turn in paragraph form. I want you to write a paragraph on your thoughts with you giving us the topic that you might choose, why you chose it, and what side you'd be interested in defending as it relates to the topic that you're choosing. That's your homework tonight. It's just sort of be brainstorming, thinking about, discussing with parents, kind of what topic or what route you might want to go with your presentation that'll be upcoming.
Okay, we're coming up on the home stretch now. We're in conclusion, and now we've got one thing left we need to do, and that's called our exit slip. It's how you get out of this class for the moment, or how do you get out of this lesson. I want you to think about something. You go to your Google Classroom, and in your analysis of the give me liberty or give me death speech, which example of rhetoric stood out to you the most? You can comment in the comment box there and turn that in, and then we will be ready to move on to our next topic for our next lesson.
Anybody have any questions? If not, we will see you next time we meet. Have a good day.